snow fell soft, erasing a killer's trail. Welcome to Marple Mysteries. I am your host, Harrington. Comment your city. I enjoy every note. Wolfe uncovers what the storm tried to bury. Snow was coming down the way New York does when it wants to make a point. Soft, steady, thick enough to wipe the street clean. From the brownstone window, I watched it mute the traffic and stack on opposite stoops. Wolfe was upstairs with his orchids, and Fritz was ruling the kitchen, so I was in the office pretending to enjoy paperwork when the bell rang. Fritz answered, naturally. I caught the second voice in the hall and knew trouble had good shoes. A minute later, I opened the door to find a woman with snow on her shoulders and eyes that could audit a bank. Tall, late 30s maybe, in a dark coat that probably cost more than my rent. "Mr. Goodwin?" she said. "That depends. Are you lost, cold, or looking to spend money?" "None of those. I need to see Nero Wolfe." "You and half the city. Come in." She walked past Fritz's polite resistance, and I guided her to the red leather chair. Wolfe was already in his, newspaper up like a barricade. He didn't look up. "I'm Eleanor Voss," she said, sitting without waiting. "I called yesterday. You refused." Wolfe lowered the paper an inch. "I refuse many things. Your point?" "My point is that I'm here." She opened her handbag and took out a flat envelope, held it a moment, then set it on her lap. "I run the Voss Foundation. My father founded it. We fund research and endowed university chairs. Next week we announce a new chair at Columbia, $7 million. The finalists' names are to stay confidential until Friday." Wolfe grunted. "And they may not?" "2 nights ago, someone got into our offices after hours. The alarms were bypassed. The guard swears he saw nothing. Nothing was stolen, but a restricted file was opened, the one with the finalists and evaluations. Yesterday morning I received a note." She passed the envelope to me. Inside was one typed line. "Snow hides footsteps, but not intent. Call off the appointment." "Appointment with the board?" I asked. "Yes. If I delay, the university asks questions. If I proceed, whoever did this may try again. The police offered a uniform in the lobby and a lecture on nerves." Wolfe regarded her. Calm face, busy eyes. "Why do you come to me?" "Because you're discreet. Because you don't frighten easily. Because my father trusted you once." That landed. Wolfe set the newspaper aside. "I do not accept cases to honor ghosts," he said. "Nor gratuitously. Your matter is a breach of security and perhaps an overestimate of danger." Her chin lifted. "It's not danger I'm worried about. It's insult. Someone walked into my house and touched what he wasn't allowed to touch. Today it was paper. Friday it could be reputations. Or the money. I want to know who and why before they decide the foundation is theirs." Outside, the snow kept falling, obliging and anonymous. Inside, Wolfe's mouth tightened the way it does when a problem begins to interest him. He looked at me. "Archie, telephone Saul Panzer. Ask him to be available this afternoon. Then inform Miss Voss of my fee, in advance." Miss Voss didn't blink. "Name it." I gave her Wolfe's numbers. She accepted as if she'd just signed for a cab. At the door, she paused to look back at the street. "All those footprints out there," she said. "You can't tell which one matters." Wolfe said, "Someone always leaves a mark, even in snow." After she left, Fritz brought coffee. Wolfe inhaled his cup and said, almost to himself, "A man who uses metaphor to threaten is either vain or cautious. We shall see which." I sat down, feeling the case settle into the brownstone like damp wool. Snow or no snow, footsteps had a way of leading home, and when they did, I expected to be the one wearing slush. Wolfe doesn't do hurry, but he does do order, and by noon, the order of the day was mine. I rang Saul Panzer and got his nasal yes, then called Miss Voss to confirm her check had cleared. That meant we were in, and when we're in, The brownstone tightens like a drum. Wolfe had me read the note aloud again. He listened with his eyes half shut. When I finished, he said, "The phrasing is deliberate. It seeks to be remembered. That suggests either a literary mind or a pretender. I want you," he went on, "to go to the Voss Foundation. Observe their premises, their people, their routines. Speak. Return with facts." Outside, the snow had stopped, leaving the city looking washed and guilty. Sidewalks were packed down to grey ridges, with new tracks scribbled over the old. If the writer of that note had walked anywhere last night, his prints were already part of the civic stew. The Voss offices were on Madison in a building that smelled of brass polish and ambition. A lobby guard recognized my name and waved me up. Upstairs, a glass door with gold lettering opened onto soft carpet, hard desks, and a quiet that meant money moved here. Eleanor met me in a conference room, suit, tired eyes, spine still straight. "Mr. Goodwin, thank you. Thank you for hiring my boss. Now show me your burglary." Her office was tidy enough to make a drill sergeant proud. The safe sat in one corner, cabinets in another, window on the street. On her desk lay a leather portfolio. "The finalist file was in the safe," she said. "After the break-in, we inventoried everything. Nothing missing." "Who had the combination?" "3 people. Me, my deputy, and our controller. It's changed. Now only me and the controller." "And alarms?" "Motion sensors in the corridor. They were disabled from the panel in the security closet. The only key to that closet is kept by the night guard." She showed me the closet. Narrow room, panel, dead monitors, guard's desk. The panel housing looked pristine, which to me meant someone knew what he was doing. "Who was on duty?" "Calvin Rook, new hire, 6 weeks. He's downstairs." We found him waiting with the 3 other insiders. Malcolm Shea, deputy director, thin and anxious. Dr. Olivia Hart, the program officer, cool as ice water. Ben Greer, controller, built like a filing cabinet. Shea started, "We're all upset. If I'd stayed later..." "If you'd stayed later, you'd be upset in traction," I said. "Who last handled the file before it went in the safe?" Hart said, "I prepared the evaluations. At 5:30, I gave it to Ms. Voss." Greer added, "The safe log shows it was opened only once after that, by Ms. Voss yesterday morning." "Electronic log," he nodded, "time-stamped." "Any notes besides Eleanor's?" "No," Hart hesitated. "I got an email this morning from a blocked address, a line of poetry about snow. I deleted it. Remember the line? Whiteness covering sin. Milton, perhaps. I can't quote it." I looked at Eleanor. "Who besides you 3 knows the finalists?" "Few, but I can't give you the list yet. Wolfe will adore that. I need a working set. I'll speak to him." Security footage existed, but that night the corridor feed had been looped for 12 minutes. Rook's logbook had a round at 2:15, a note about a delivery door gusting at 2:30, and all clear at 2:40. He swore the gap was coffee time. No one recalled seeing him after midnight, though the elevator logged 2 trips. He said it with honest eyes and a practiced shrug. His boots had fresh salt lines, and his watch tan didn't match a 6-week job. I shook hands all around and left with a tidy burglary, a missing 12 minutes, and a man who looked too ready to be innocent. I got back to the brownstone with snow still clinging to my overcoat and facts that looked small until Wolfe pressed on them. He was in the office, hands folded, eyes on the globe like he expected it to confess. I gave him the layout, the safe, the panel, the looped footage, and the cast. He listened without interrupting, which is his version of applause. When I finished, he said, "You omitted the most important information, your impression." "Fine. Shea worries himself hollow. Hart could freeze a furnace. Greer counts pennies like he loves them, and Rook is either too neat or too smart. The gap on the tape is the hinge." "Perhaps," Wolfe said. Or the tape is theater to direct our gaze? What do you think of the note? Somebody who reads, or somebody who wants us to think he reads? He nodded once, vain or cautious. You agree? Saul Panzer is coming. Saul arrived at 3 with a damp hat and a grin that never means charity. Wolfe instructed him to learn everything about Calvin Rook: employment, finances, habits, associates. Saul muttered, "Everything takes time." Wolfe's eyebrow climbed. Saul left to find time. Wolfe had me call Eleanor. She came at 4 with a folder and a new edge to her mouth. I spoke to Columbia. If we postpone the announcement, they'll think the board is split. We can't. You will not postpone, Wolfe said. You will proceed as planned. Meanwhile, you will give us the finalists' names. She hesitated, then opened the folder. 5 names, all academics, all impressive. One familiar from headlines about grant wars. Wolfe read them, then asked about connections. Only professional ones, Eleanor said. They've all been interviewed. Dr. Hart handled most of that. Wolfe looked at Hart's signature on the evaluations. Interesting. Miss Voss? Has anything been touched since the intrusion? No. Not even slightly. Nothing I know of. Then learn. Return to your office tonight after closing. Stand in your doorway. Look, smell, listen. Report to Mr. Goodwin anything that seems amiss. Even a file shifted. She studied him. You think they'll come back? They already have, Wolfe said. The note arrived after the intrusion. It is the second act. There will be a third. After she left, Fritz said dinner would be delayed. The lamb had arrived late. Wolfe accepted the tragedy with a sigh and told me to eat anyway because he wanted my head clear. That's Wolfe. He'll starve himself for orchids, but he'll feed me for logic. At 7, my phone rang. Eleanor's voice was lower than before. Mr. Goodwin, I'm in my office. Something is wrong. What kind of wrong? The safe is open. I'm sure I locked it. Nothing is missing. But inside, there's a small glass vial that wasn't there before. It has white powder. I told her to touch nothing and I'd be there fast. Wolfe, hearing my end, said, "We go," which is as close as he gets to urgency. We went only as far as the hallway. Then he sat, because that's his rule, and said, "Archie, retrieve it, and telephone Inspector Kramer on your way." I took a cab through streets that gleamed with thawed snow. The lobby guard at Madison was pale. Eleanor met me like she'd swallowed a nail and led me up. The safe door yawned. Inside, on the lower shelf, sat a corked vial no bigger than my thumb, dusted with powder like sugar. I slid on gloves, lifted it into an evidence bag, and smelled nothing through the plastic. "You didn't put this here," I said. "I would remember if I stocked narcotics," she snapped. The security closet door was ajar. On the desk lay Rook's key ring, neat as if staged for a photograph. That was our subtle trespass, all right. Whoever was writing poetry had started leaving props for us to find later. Kramer arrived with the weather in his face and a young detective at his elbow. He took one look at the open safe and the evidence bag in my hand and started to swear, then remembered Eleanor was there and edited himself down to a growl. "You said no uniforms in the lobby," Eleanor told him. "And you said you weren't calling me till there was blood," he shot back. "What have we got, Goodwin?" A safe that opened itself, a vial that didn't belong, and a guard who left his keys like a calling card. Kramer eyed the vial. "Drugs. Maybe flour. I'm bringing it home for a lab." The detective, Ashby, photographed everything while Kramer prowled. He checked the panel, the closet, the corridor door. The loop in the footage was still there for last night, too. Same 12-minute hole, same time window. Somebody had a habit. The prints by the security closet had been mopped, but the hallway rug showed a new damp patch, square and careful, as if someone had knelt there to work the lock without hurrying once. "Where's Rook?" Kramer asked. Eleanor said, "He stepped out for dinner at 6. He never came back." Kramer grunted and sent Ashby downstairs to hunt through the building. Then he pulled me aside. "What's Wolfe think?" "He thinks somebody wants us staring at security, not motive. $7 million breeds motive," he said. "These academic types fight dirty." I let that ride. In my head, I had 5 professors on a list, 3 insiders with a safe combo, and a missing guard who might be a patsy or a partner. If Rook was running, he picked a good night. Fresh snow had started again. Kramer told Eleanor to shut down the office, then walked me to the elevators. "Call me if Wolfe sneezes," he said. "Keep that vial sealed. If it's narcotics, you're holding felony evidence." Back at the brownstone, Wolfe was waiting like a spider that hadn't moved, but still knew the fly had twitched. I gave him the update, including Rook's disappearance. He frowned at that, which meant his board had shifted a square. "You see, Archie, the vial is not a threat. It is a signal. The intruder wanted Miss Voss to find it." "Signal of what?" "Of capacity, of intimacy, of contempt. A man who can enter twice can enter a third time. He's saying so. He also left the guards keys to emphasize that security is irrelevant." Wolfe held out his hand. I gave him the bag. He examined the vial through the plastic with distaste. "We will not speculate on its contents, but its presence narrows our field." "How?" "Only someone who knew the safe would be open tonight could place it there. Miss Voss was instructed to come. Who knew she would comply? You, I, and the writer. Therefore, he anticipated her obedience. He knows her well enough to predict her conduct. Or he just gambled." Wolfe shook his head. "No, the note's tone is imperative, not supplicatory. It assumes authority, and authority comes from leverage." He paused. "What of Dr. Hart's deleted email?" "Poetry about snow hiding sin?" She couldn't quote it. "Convenient." Wolfe's lips thinned. "Tomorrow you will see Dr. Hart. Also, Mr. Shea. Be amiable and probe there. Relations with Miss Voss? Find the lever." I opened my mouth to gripe, then closed it because dinner smelled like rescue. Fritz served lamb and potatoes at 8:30, and Wolfe ate with the concentration of a man solving a crossword in sauce. Halfway through, the doorbell rang. Fritz brought in a messenger envelope, wet at the edges. Wolfe slit it with his letter opener and read a single sheet. He handed it to me. It was another typed line. "The snow falls twice. The third time, it buries." Wolfe said softly, "Excellent. He's obliging us with his schedule." Morning in the brownstone started the way it should. Coffee, orchids, and Wolfe pretending the world could wait. It couldn't. Saul Panzer called at 10 with a report, and the tone of a man who enjoys bad news only when he's the one delivering it. "Calvin Rook isn't Calvin Rook," Saul said. "He used a clean social security number, but the owner's a retired plumber in Queens. Your guard's real name is Calvin Rote. Petty larceny twice, assault once. Did time upstate, got out 3 years ago, works nights when he can. Last address a rooming house on 9th Avenue. He didn't sleep there last night." Wolfe didn't waste expression, but I felt the case click. "Any money?" I asked. "Not much. But he's been seen with a woman named Della Lorne, works at the foundation. Receptionist. I'm sending you her picture." Wolfe said, "Good. Archie, go." I went to Madison with Saul's photo in my pocket and snow still crusting the curbs. The foundation looked normal from outside, which meant it was lying. Eleanor was already in, coat off, jaw set. She read Saul's report without surprise. "Della Lorne is my assistant's assistant," she said. "She answers phones. She's been with us a year. Quiet, competent." "Quiet people keep their own weather," I said. "Where is she?" "In front. Come." Della was in her 20s, pretty in a cloudy way, with a headset and a stack of mail. When Eleanor told her to come into the conference room, she obeyed crisp as a soldier. She recognized me, and her eyes flicked to my notebook. I started easy. "You were here last night?" Yes. I stayed late to finish a donor list. Till when? 7. I left before the cleaners. You know the night guard? He's nice, she said too fast. He brings the mail cart up sometime. Did he bring you anything besides mail? No. Della, Eleanor said, this is serious. The guard has vanished. That made her look down at her hands. He called me around 6. He said someone was in trouble and he needed a favor. I told him I couldn't. He said he understood, then hung up. What favor? He didn't say. Did you tell anyone? No. Why not? She lifted her chin. Because it sounded personal, and because Mr. Shea doesn't like me wasting his time. There we are, I said. Let's talk about Shea. Her eyes widened her hair. He yells. He's always yelling. He says I'm slow. I'm not. Is he yelling because you're slow, or because you know things? She stared at the table. I know he hates Dr. Hart. Eleanor's head turned. Hates? He says she's pushing her own people. He said she'd ruin the foundation. I heard him on the phone last week telling someone Eleanor can be steered if you press the right place. That was a lever. I wrote it down. Who was he talking to? I don't know. He shut his door. Did he mention the chair finalists? No, but I've seen him meet with one of them, Professor Kendall. She came early for her interview. He took her to lunch. Eleanor's face stayed still, but the color went out of it. That was not authorized. Nothing about this is authorized, I said. When Rook called, did you hear anything in the background? Traffic, voices. Music, she said. Old jazz, like a bar. Good enough. Go back to your desk. Don't leave without telling Miss Voss. Outside the room, Eleanor exhaled once. Hard. Shea said I can be steered? According to a receptionist who just got scared straight. Wolfe will want it. Every word in order. Right away. Malcolm's ambitious, she said. But threats. We'll see. For now, keep Hart and Shea close. Somebody's planning a third Snowfall. I left her there and headed for Shea's office to look for more weather in a quiet room. Shea's office had the kind of glass wall that says transparency while keeping the blinds half drawn. He was at his desk, sleeves rolled, tie loose, acting busy because being busy is his best alibi. When I came in, he stood up too quickly. Goodwin, any progress? Depends what you call progress. Mind if I sit? He waved me to a chair and kept standing. The desk was a geometry of piles, and on top lay a yellow pad with names I didn't get close enough to read before he slid it under a folder. You had lunch with a finalist, Professor Kendall, I said. His face went through surprise and landed on annoyance. She arrived early. I didn't want her waiting in the lobby. We talked about potholes. Hardly a conspiracy. Was Dr. Hart there? Livia, he snorted. She's in love with her own judgment. She'd replace the board if she could. I won't apologize for watching the process. Watching Eleanor too. I hear you said she could be steered if pressed right. The blood went to his ears. Who told you that? Someone who hears things. Was it your line? He sat down slowly. I might have said it in frustration. Eleanor is principled. Sometimes principles need nudging. That's not a crime. Depends where the nudge comes from. Any idea who's nudging her with threats? He spread his hands. Academics are vipers in tweed. Any of those 5 would bite for 7 million. Or an outsider who wants the chair for a pet project. Any enemies of yours? I'm not that important. Important people always say that. I let it hang. Where were you the night of the first break-in? At home. My wife will vouch. And last night when the safe opened itself? Home again. I left at 5:30. Ask the cleaning crew. On the way out, I glanced at his wall calendar. Friday was circled in red, and under it he'd written, Kendall, with a question mark. Not proof, but a pulse. Dr. Hart was across the hall in a room that smelled faintly of rosemary and cold confidence. She greeted me seated, hands folded. "Mr. Goodwin, how theatrical of you to arrive unannounced." I aimed to please. "You got an email about Snow hiding Sin." Her lips curved. It was a childish attempt to rattle me. I deleted it. Why not forward it to Eleanor? Because it wasn't about the Foundation, it was about me. I don't indulge anonymous melodrama. Ever meet Calvin Rook? No. Della Lorne says Shay hates you. Her eyes sharpened. Della should answer phones. Malcolm objects to my recommendations. He prefers donors to scholarship. Do you prefer scholarship to donors? I prefer integrity to ambition. That sounds like a slogan. It is a standard. I watched for the jitter under the lacquer and saw none. If she was nervous, she hid it well. Any contact with the finalists outside official interviews? I asked. Professionally, yes. Socially, no. What about Professor Kendall? I know her from conferences. She's formidable and she resents being managed by men who read ledgers. She stood, ending it. I presume Wolfe will summon us when he has finished observing our folly. Count on it. I also stopped by Greer's cubicle. He was on the phone with an accountant, voice tight, and when he saw me, he covered the receiver as if it were a weapon. He insisted the safe log couldn't be forged without his code, then asked if Wolfe believed in accidents. I told him no. Back in the lobby, Della avoided my eyes. Outside, the snow had started again, a thin new veil over the sidewalk mess. 2 snowfalls down, 1 to go. I called the brownstone from the cab and gave Wolfe the conversation straight, including Shay's calendar note. Wolfe said, "Good, you have stirred the pool. Now we will watch what rises." By evening, Wolfe had the brownstone humming before a storm. Quiet on top, everybody placed where he wants them, and me in motion. He had me issue invitations in his clipped style. Miss Voss, Mr. Shay, Dr. Hart, Mr. Greer, and, at his insistence, Professor Kendall. He also told me to ring Kramer for a courtesy to law. Kramer grumbled but agreed. At 9, Greer arrived first, briefcase clutched like a life raft. He kept straightening his tie and checking the clock. Shay came next, chin high, coat brushed too carefully for a snowy night. Dr. Hart entered cool and contained, giving Wolfe a nod that was half respect, half challenge. Eleanor arrived last among the insiders, looking sleepless but steady. Professor Kendall was the outsider, tall, wiry, older than the rest by a decade. She wore tweed and the look of a woman used to hostile rooms. When I offered her a chair, she took it without thanks. Wolfe let them settle. He didn't do greetings. Fritz brought coffee and retreated. "Why are we here?" Shay demanded. "To prevent a third snowfall," Wolfe said, "and to identify the person who has twice invaded the Voss Foundation and threatened it. Mr. Goodwin has reported your movements and temperaments. I've considered them." Hart's gaze didn't waver. "You have no authority over us." "Madam, authority is irrelevant. Accuracy is not." Eleanor leaned forward. "Please, listen." Wolfe inclined his head. "We begin with the intrusion on Sunday. The alarms were bypassed from the security panel using the guard's key. The corridor camera was looped for 12 minutes. The safe was opened. Nothing removed. The next day a note arrived. Phrased to impress and to coerce." He looked at Greer. "The safe log is electronic." "Yes," Greer said. "Tamper-proof." "Nothing is tamper-proof to a competent man with access," Wolfe said. "Last night the safe opened again and a vial of powder was placed within. The guard's keys were left in the closet, and the same 12-minute loop appeared." Shay scoffed. "So the guard did it. He's gone." "Not precisely," Wolfe said. "Mr. Panzer established that Calvin Rook is an alias for Calvin Rote, a petty criminal, a tool. He vanished after being used." Kendall crossed her legs. What has this to do with me? Patience. Wolf's eyes moved to Hart. Dr. Hart, you received an anonymous email invoking snow and sin. You deleted it and did not inform Miss Voss. Hart's mouth tightened. Because it was aimed at me. Aimed at you because you are central, Wolf said. You conducted interviews, prepared evaluations, and know the finalists. You also know Miss Voss well enough to predict her obedience to my instruction to return to the office. Shay barked a laugh. You're accusing Livia. I am weighing probabilities. Mr. Shay, you were overheard saying Miss Voss could be steered if pressed in the right place. You met privately with Professor Kendall. You wrote her name on your calendar for Friday. Shay flushed. I was preparing for board questions. Wolf turned to Kendall. Professor, your research center is in distress. If you secured this chair, you would guide $7 million. Someone has tried to postpone or derail the announcement. The threats used snow as metaphor for concealment. Your specialty is forensic climatology. You lecture on how snowfall obscures evidence and footprints. The room tightened. Kendall stared at Wolf. That's not a secret. No, it is. A signature. The writer wanted to be recognized, so he chose imagery tied to his identity. Therefore, Professor Kendall, you hired Mr. Rote to enter the offices, plant the vial, and send the notes, expecting intimidation to delay Friday and give you room to bargain or eliminate rivals. Greer stared at his hands. Hart went very still, and Eleanor's eyes widened, not in surprise, but in reluctant recognition of it. Nobody spoke. Then Kendall said evenly, You have no proof? Kendall's voice had the calm of a tenured person who has never had to beg for air. Wolf regarded her as if she were an orchid with a blemish. Proof is a vulgar word, he said. We deal in demonstration. Mr. Goodwin, the vial. I produced the evidence bag. Lab says it's powdered chalk, not narcotics, not poison, just a prop. Pure theater, nothing more. Kendall's eyes flicked to it, quick and unwilling. Wolf caught the flick. You intended it to be found, he said. You needed a token to sharpen your threat without risking a real crime. Chalk was safe, familiar, and symbolically white. Snow in miniature. You assumed Miss Voss would open the safe because you know her habit. She checks the contents each evening when anxious. Only 2 people besides you knew that routine. One is Miss Voss. The other is Dr. Hart. Hart's head turned. You told him my routine, Eleanor said quietly. You've known it for years. Wolf went on. Dr. Hart did not act. She was used. The email to her was bait to make her delete evidence and seem secretive. Mr. Shay's overheard remark was bait to stir distrust. Mr. Rote's keys were bait to focus us on a vanished guard. All this is positioning by someone who understands institutions, politics, and the power of narrative. Kendall said. That describes half the people in this room. Not quite, Wolf said. You alone of the finalists have published on Snowfall as concealment. You also alone needed delay. You are not the board's favorite. Your center is short of money, and postponement would give you time to pressure donors or threaten scandal. You have used scandal before. She smiled thinly. You read my work. Regrettably. More relevantly, we have Mr. Rote. At that cue, the bell rang. I let Saul Panzer in, holding a damp, sullen man by the elbow. Without his uniform, Calvin Rote looked smaller and meaner. Saul said, found him in a jazz bar on Lenox, trying to trade his watch for fare. Rote glared at us, then at Kendall, and the glare shifted into expectation. Wolf said, Mr. Rote, you will tell Inspector Kramer what you did and who hired you. I ain't saying nothing without my lawyer. Your lawyer will advise you to speak, Wolf said. Your employer paid you poorly and will deny you. If you speak now, you may bargain for leniency. If you keep silent, you face the intrusions and impersonation alone. Consider also that your employer's hands are clean unless you soil them. Rote's jaw worked. Kendall's shoulders stiffened. "This is coercion. This is arithmetic," Wolfe said. The radiator ticked. Rote looked at Kendall again, anger rising. "She said it was just a scare," he muttered. "Go in, open the safe, take pictures, leave a little snow in a bottle." She gave me the key, told me where the panel was. Said Miss Voss would fold. Kendall stood. "You idiot." "Maybe," Rote said. "But you told me if I got caught you didn't know me. So I'm talking." Kramer arrived mid-breath, and I opened the door on the confession he'd want bottled. Wolfe summarized fast. Kramer listened, his mouth settling into a hard line. He cuffed Kendall with more ceremony than force. She didn't resist, only stared at Wolfe as if trying to memorize the shape of defeat. When they'd gone, the brownstone exhaled. Eleanor sat back, hands trembling once, then stilling. Shay looked sick. Hart looked older. Wolfe lifted his cold coffee. The third Snowfall was to be public. You were to delay Friday, and she would go to the press with insinuations of favoritism. Snow buries by volume, not by weight. Fortunately, we have melted it. I said, "And dinner?" Fritz appeared, grave with relief. Wolfe looked at Eleanor. "Guard your house. Institutions are like winter streets. If you do not shovel ambition promptly, it becomes a hazard." When the door shut behind Kramer and his unwilling academic, the brownstone felt like it had been holding its breath all week and had just now remembered how to inhale. Eleanor stayed a few minutes, letting the tremor in her hands fade while Fritz set a tray for her in the dining room. Shay and Hart drifted out faster, each of them wearing the private expression of people who've survived a fire only to notice the smoke in their clothes. Wolfe didn't watch them go. He sat in his chair, fingers tented, gaze fixed on nothing in particular, which means he was reviewing what happened and deciding what to think of it. Saul Panzer lingered in the hall for his check and a nod. He got both. "Archie," Wolfe said when the house was quiet again. "Telephone Miss Voss tomorrow morning. Tell her to proceed with the announcement. The Foundation must not appear to have been intimidated." "She'll like hearing that from you," I said. "Do not be frivolous. This affair illustrates how easily public virtue can be captured by private desperation." He frowned at his empty cup. "And by bad poetry." Fritz served dinner for the two of us at a civilized hour for once. Wolfe attacked the lamb as if he meant to punish it for arriving late yesterday. I ate too, because I'd learned that a hungry Archie makes stupid connections. The snow outside was thinning into water, sliding off stoops in tired rivulets. Footsteps were coming back. After dinner, Wolfe lit a cigar, a rare indulgence when the orchids are asleep. Professor Kendall will be charged with criminal trespass, conspiracy, and perhaps attempted extortion, he said. Not enough to ruin her forever, but enough to remove her from competition. That is justice adequate to her offense. You almost sound sympathetic. I am not sympathetic, he said. I am accurate. She was not evil. She was frightened. There is a distinction that courts ignore and wise men observe. I leaned back, letting the soreness in my legs unwind. What about Rote? He'll sing and still do time. He should. Hunger is not a license. Saul says he might get a deal if he keeps talking. He will keep talking. He enjoys it. The phone rang near 11. It was Eleanor, her voice steadier than earlier. "Mr. Goodwin, the board met by conference call. We're going ahead. Columbia has been informed. Dr. Hart will present the evaluation summary. Malcolm Shea has offered his resignation. Are you accepting it?" "Not tonight. I want to sleep first." She hesitated. Mr. Wolfe said something about shoveling ambition. I think I understand it, but I wish I didn't. That's how lessons feel when they stick, I told her. Get some rest. Tomorrow you'll be busy being a foundation again. After I hung up, Wolfe said, "You reassured her. Part of the service. You should try it sometime." I did. I solved her problem. That is reassurance in his dialect. I looked at the street through the window. The city had turned glossy, reflecting lamplight in puddles. A kid slipped on the corner and laughed. An old man walked carefully with a bag of groceries. The snow that had hidden footsteps was gone, but tracks fade anyway. New ones are always being laid down. Upstairs, the orchid lights clicked on, timed by Wolfe's system, and I pictured him checking each bloom as if it were an alibi. Order for him was not comfort but control, and control had done its job. Wolfe rose at last. "Good night, Archie." "Good night. Try not to dream in verse." He sniffed and went upstairs. I stayed a minute longer, enjoying the silence that only arrives after trouble has been escorted out. Then I turned off the desk lamp and headed for bed, thinking that winter's real trick is that cover is temporary and motive isn't. Friday came bright and wet, the kind of late winter day that pretends spring is close. Wolfe was at breakfast, reading the Times like a magistrate. Fritz ruled the sideboard. I was enjoying the absence of alarms when the phone rang. It was Eleanor Voss. Her voice carried the hush of a crowded room. "We've announced. The chair goes to Dr. Anselm Rudd." The board applauded. Columbia smiled. No one panicked. "Good," I said. "How are you holding up?" "Ask me tomorrow. Is Mr. Wolfe there?" I carried the receiver to the dining room. Wolfe took it as if it were a bill. "Miss Voss." She thanked him quickly and hung up. Wolfe went back to his paper without a ripple. The case was already sliding into the past. Still, the air smelled of cold ink and bruised ambition today. At noon, Kramer dropped by for closure. Kendall had waived extradition, and her lawyer was hunting a deal that kept her out of Rikers and off the front pages. Rote had given a full statement and was being held on impersonation and burglary. The DA was dangling leniency if he testified cleanly. Kramer shrugged. She'll lose the chair, the center, probably her pride. That's enough. Then he said he'd pass his thanks to Wolfe and left before I could joke about it. I did pass it on. Wolfe sniffed. Inspector Kramer's gratitude is as rare as January lilacs and as unnecessary. That afternoon, Saul Panzer came to collect his fee and a little satisfaction. Rote says Kendall tried soft pressure first, Saul told me. She offered Hart a job at her center, hinted at a book advance. Hart refused. Then Kendall went for the snow. Poetry as plan B, I said. Exactly. People show you what they are when they fail. Saul tipped his hat and went. Near 6, Wolfe summoned me to the office, not because he needed another report, but because he liked the room full when he was thinking. "Archie, your hours have been billed?" "Done." "Good. Never let virtue be free. It encourages neglect." We had dinner early, veal, carrots, and my beer. The brownstone felt clean again, the way it does after strangers stop crossing its threshold. Halfway through, Wolfe looked up from his plate. "The note writer erred not in intelligence, but in vanity," he said. He could have concealed his identity. Instead, he wanted admiration for his cleverness. Then he hired a guard with a record and left keys on a desk, I said. Not his best stanza. Genius is irrelevant. Appetite is the danger. When a person hungers for one thing, money, power, recognition, he will eat through the table to reach it. Kendall hungered for recognition, Shay for influence, Hart for integrity, Miss Voss for order. Each hunger made a footprint. That's a lot of appetite for 1 week. It is the human condition. Wolfe dabbed his lips. Snow hides footsteps, Archie, but it does not change their direction. We merely follow the direction. Fritz cleared plates with the quiet pride of a man who believes dinner repairs the world. Outside, a thin frost was gathering on the window ledge, not enough to count as snowfall, just enough to shine under the street lamp. So what's your final reflection, boss? I asked. Ethics, appetite, Human folly. Take your pick. He considered. One should be wary of purity as an ideal. It is too easily weaponized. The world is not white, and those who insist it should be are often the first to throw dirt. Noted, I said. Also sounds like something you'd tell an orchid. He allowed a trace of amusement. Or an academic. I finished my beer and decided that if winter kept dusting the city with false cleanliness, we might as well keep a shovel by the door. It doesn't stop snow from falling, but it reminds you the street belongs to whoever clears it. The weekend slid in behind Friday, quiet but final. By Saturday morning, the city had turned dry and ordinary again, and the front steps of the brownstone were bare of slush and drama. Wolfe was upstairs with the orchids, humming under his breath. I was in the office sorting receipts when the bell rang. Eleanor Voss came in alone this time, no snow on her shoulders, no hurry in her eyes. She carried a folded newspaper, and when she sat, she laid it on my desk. The headline was polite about attempted interference and very unpolite about Professor Kendall's alleged scheme. The announcement was treated as a triumph of integrity. I knew better, but I let the paper sit there. I wanted to thank him properly, she said. Not by phone. Wolfe descended a few minutes later in sweater and slippers, looking like a man dragged from paradise. He took his chair. Fritz appeared with coffee. "Miss Voss?" Wolfe said. She leaned forward. "You saved the chair and the foundation, but mostly you saved me from doing something foolish out of pride. I was ready to turn on my own people." "You were encouraged to," Wolfe said. "That was the tactic." "I keep replaying it," she said. "The first break-in did nothing. The second left chalk. The third threatened burial. How did you know it was Kendall so soon?" "Because the crime was not the intrusion," Wolfe said. "It was the narrative. The writer wished to be seen as clever, so he chose an image tied to his work. Of the finalists, only Professor Kendall had made snow a professional signature. The rest was arrangement." And wrote. A tool hired for locks and expendability. His alias protected the employer briefly. His vanity betrayed him. Eleanor nodded once. "We're tightening security. Malcolm Shea says he'll stay if I want him, but I don't trust his appetite anymore." "Trust is a ledger," Wolfe said. "Keep him if you balance ambition with oversight." She gave a tired smile. "Dr. Hart is angry with me for letting Kendall near the process." "She's angry with herself," Wolfe said. "Integrity is not immunity." We sat a moment, listening to the radiator. Eleanor looked around at the brownstone. "I learned something ugly," she said. "People can call on any symbol, purity, justice, even snow, and twist it into a weapon." "You should recognize it," Wolfe said. "Disillusion hurts only if you expected illusion to last." She rose. "Then I'll carry recognition instead. Thank you, Mr. Wolfe." "Thank you, Archie." I walked her to the door. On the stoop, she paused and watched a delivery boy make fresh tracks across a clean patch of sidewalk. "There'll be another snowfall someday," she said. "Sure," I told her, "but you'll own a shovel now." She laughed, and then she was gone. Her heels clicked down the steps. For the first time all week, I felt the case leave my shoulders, like a coat shrugged off in warmth outside. Back inside, Wolfe had returned to the dining room. Fritz was setting the table. "You're in a philosophical mood," I said. "No," Wolfe replied. "I'm in a practical one. Philosophy is practicality at a distance." "What's the practical takeaway?" He considered. "When men covet whiteness, money, reputation, moral purity, they choose the shortest path to it. The shortest path is rarely the cleanest. Watch not for mud on their shoes, but for the haste of their steps." "Nice," I said. "And I suppose you'll watch your own steps from that chair." "Precisely." He sat. "Tell Fritz the pheasant should not be overdone. It is a sin to bury flavor." I carried the message and glanced once more at the window. The street was gray and honest, the kind of day where nothing hides for long. That was fine by me. I'd spent a week chasing footprints through snow. I was ready for pavement again.